Hello everybody, welcome to Short Shot Archery. Anthony here, and in this video I'm going to talk about my experience testing out the Bohning Griffin Vanes. Okay, so what are we doing in this video? Well, I have ran some tests and I'm going to share them with you from the start. This is a very unique vane design. Most vanes look like this, or like this, solid all the way through, or maybe there's a hole or two, because that's been done before. But generally, vanes are not this open. It's kind of wild. It's kind of interesting, and that was something that I was, trying to figure out through my testing, like how is this going to work. So this is what I have so far. So before I even started shooting these vanes, I had some things in mind, especially after talking to Bohning at the ATA show. They made it sound like these vanes were the end-all be-all of vanes. They beat all the other vanes in all these categories that they didn't tell me about. So I was like, oh well, these should be pretty special. Right off the bat, the price was pretty special. $50 for 40 vanes is a special price. That's $1.25 a vane. So from seeing that, that told me that these things need to perform. So I was already interested in speed. I was interested in durability. How they were going to fletch to the arrow shaft, and just main components like that. What is their performance? What's their effect in the wind? So I did my best to measure, or at least demonstrate, all these different points, and now let's actually go through them. So after fletching up this arrow here with the Griffin Vanes, well, I fletched up several more, including this one. Originally I fletched them up with tape. That was a terrible idea. I even let the tape sit. Like, I fletched one arrow and shot it right away, and then I fletched up like 3 or 4 more. I let the vane sit with the tape on the arrow, gave it a good 24 hours. That way the tape could fully adhere to the vane, and the vane fully adhering to the arrow shaft. It's more than the recommended usage of the tape. And within I don't know, a couple dozen shots, you could already see that the tape was flaking off. It just did not bond to the plastic of the vane. Now, I did not have Bohning's particular tape. I wasn't just going to go out and buy that. Most archers just fletch with the tape they have, whatever brand it is. And that tape did not work. So maybe it works better with the Bohning tape. But honestly, I've fletched arrows with Bohning tape in the past, and it's honestly no different than your standard spin wing tape for the most part. So I think that kind of makes that point kind of mute. You definitely want to glue these. I don't see any reason not to. Of course, that led to another situation. Gluing kind of sucks because it's messy. And I try my best to to keep it as clean as possible, but you still end up like basically super gluing your fingers together. And it takes a little bit longer because, yes, you don't have to like draw lines and then set every piece of tape, but like I gotta put the vane in the jig, and then I gotta do this nice thin bead of super glue down it, and then I gotta set it in there, set it up right, and then place it, and then wait a couple minutes, because you don't want the thing to move. Like, yes, it's super glue, but at the same point in time, you don't want it moving on the arrow. You want them to have the correct profile, or what's the point of having vanes? So it still took a lot of time. took took way too much time. So it's not any faster really than fletching with your normal spin wings. They were indicating that it was going to speed up the process, but unless they got some magical stuff going on, I don't see an improvement there. So that was the first case. So now that we have the arrows actually fletched, we got to go on to round two. And round two was, well, shooting them, and I shot them mostly with these vanes here. This will just be our generic vane, as we'll call it, because we're not doing a direct comparison between these two vanes, but I do need some kind of example to, compare the Griffin Vane to, so we can get an idea on what's going on. And right off the bat, they flew about the same speed. Like, I honestly could not tell you how fast or slower they were. Like, they seemed like they went basically the same speed. So we had to break out the handy dandy chronograph and figure that out. So I did 5 chronograph tests of this arrow and this arrow, again, for this video. And here's the numbers I got. So for the Spider Vane 702, aka the Brady Vane 702 world record vane, I got an average of 197.4 feet per second. For the Griffin Vane, I got an average of 198.3 feet per second. So they are technically a little bit faster. Honestly, like, I spent a lot of time trying to shooting my shot, really focusing on trying to watch that arrow go down. I honestly can't tell the difference. Sight setting wise, maybe it's a click at 18. I really didn't change anything, so they're so close. It's kind of like a moot point. So again, though, higher price, but not a higher speed. So it's not flying faster, which is interesting because this is only an inch. This is an inch. This vane is an inch and a half. There's a lot more, material going on here. It's also not empty. It has, we have material on the inside here. This is empty on the inside here. You would think this one should be, significantly faster. I was honestly predicting a good 5 feet per second faster because it's essentially a bear shaft. There's even profile height wise, there's no height to it. It should just rip down there, but it didn't, which led me kind of a little bit further down. It led me to, well, if they're not flying faster, does this arrow weigh more? So I weighed these two arrows, and interestingly enough, they basically came in at the exact same weight. Spider Vane 702 arrow came in at 385.81, and this one came in at 385.80. So there is a 0.01 difference between these two arrows weight-wise, and ironically, it doesn't do too much. Yes, 1 feet per second, is a difference. But you would think it would be drastic, especially since these are so little. But I guess because they're like this, they're plastic. It makes them a lot denser, a lot heavier. You can get a lot more vane here for the weight you get for this holy vane here. So that did kind of lead into just shooting quantities of Griffin vanes and our test vanes. I shot a whole bunch of them, hundreds of shots. And the video you're seeing is an example of that. But overall, there really wasn't much of a grouping difference. I do have to say, I felt like the generic vane, the vane that has more vane, at the shorter distances, like 18 meters, performed better. I feel like my groups were better. I don't know if that's because we have more vane, so it's being corrected, as opposed to this one where there is no, there's not much of a vein here. So I really don't think there's a lot of correction or smoothing out of the flight when you make a poor shot. Now, granted, I'm not shooting like Brady level scores here. I'm not shooting upper 590s, flirting with 600 all the time. I'm at a pretty good average of sitting between like 550 and 560, give or take, which I think is a pretty respectable score, and I think it's good enough to get at least a pretty good idea grouping wise on what was going on. Of course, there was always my own little mistakes, because everybody makes little mistakes in their shot every once in a while. But overall, though, I do feel like the bigger vane performed a little bit better on the indoor setting, which makes sense. Now, I know some people are going to be disappointed at this next part, but I have not gotten into actually testing them at 70 meters because I've been shooting for the Lancaster Classic, and right now I'm actually shooting for the Vegas shoot. So after this, I will be fully moving back to 70. I'll be moving my whole range back to 70, and I will be shooting primarily 70, and I'll be testing these vanes at 70 when that happens. And I'll probably just make a second video, which will be the final review of these arrows once I feel like I have everything squared away with them, because there is additional information on these, additional testing that I did, because I'm trying to figure out why would you do this to a vane. This has not been done before to my knowledge, and the next test I think really illustrates that better, and that would be the hairdryer test I did. Now, I know this is not the most scientific, but it gives you an idea on what's going on with this vane. Why did they design it like this? So as you can see in the clips, I set a hairdryer up. I set the arrow on like a spinning rack. There's like ball bearings, and it can spin pretty freely on there. There's really low friction, and I tried to set it up where the dryer was so many inches away, and we would blow air and it would spin the arrow, or try to spin the arrow. So I did that with our test arrow first, and you can see how easy this test arrow, our control arrow spins. It spins very freely, very quickly. The puppy was ripping, and that was only on medium speed. So then I did the same thing with the Griffin Vane, and well, it didn't. It did not spin, which was interesting because I expected it to spin to some degree. It seems like these cutouts in here just let the side winds just pass right through this vane, which is interesting. I even ended up turning the hairdryer to high, so it's blowing even more air, this time very hot air. I'm surprised it didn't melt anything, but it didn't move. It just kind of sat there, or if I got a good angle, I could actually just move the whole physical arrow off the little test stand. So that kind of got me thinking, is there any other vanes I own that act like the Bohning Vane? And there is one that's pretty darn close. I actually tried out the Jet 6 SV Vane here, and this arrow actually didn't move too much when it was hit with air from the side, which was very interesting. Maybe not quite as good as the Griffin Vane, but I need to develop that testing method more to get a more concrete answer for that. But overall, it did give me an interesting perspective on why they designed this vane, because they are trying to eliminate the factors of that left and right wind. Now, I did also use the hairdryer from the front to see if I can get them to spin from the front, and the Griffin Vane did move a little bit when trying to blow some air from the front or the side to see if I can catch some of this upper part of the vane here, and it moved a little bit. On the other hand, our test vane, our base vane, this thing ripped. It was flying, it was spinning so fast. Also, another test you can do is stick the arrow in your hand like this, and your fingers like this. Whoa, look how fast and easy that spins. Well, doing the same thing with the Griffin Vane. Nothing. Like, honestly, nothing. It does not want to spin. This is definitely different from the norm, and I'm just going to have to see how this plays out at 70. I know people probably want to have this all summed up into one video, but I know a lot of people are interested in this vane, so I wanted to be able to put out, information on it and tell you like where we're going with the testing on this vane. Other than that, I did do like a squish test. Now you may have saw a clip of that on my Instagram, Anthony Archery 720, and yeah, basically what I did was I added more and more weight to see how much the vane could take before it started to squish and deform and not go back to its original shape. So of course we started with our test vane. We started with an ounce. We worked our way to 2 ounces, then 3, and then we got to the point where we basically had like 5 ounces or so on this, and you could definitely see a crease starting to develop in the vane, and it was not just flexing back to its original position. Because like if you just squish this vane, it pops back to its original its original shape. But if you push too hard, you will bend the material enough to make a permanent crease, and that's not something you want in your vane. This is just a way to kind of illustrate the durability of the vane. Maybe in the future I can actually get sensors and things involved where we can actually figure out how much weight a vane can take before it actually bends. But that's going to be for something down the road, because that has to be like created, developed. I got to test it. A lot of work would have to be done in that, but I think this is the squish test is a nice way to at least show you, how much weight can this thing take? Because I can squish a vane, but how much, I don't know, how much force am I really applying? At least I can tell you, okay, I don't know how much the hinge part actually weighs, but if I add 5 ounces to this, and then, at 6 ounces the vane folds and it creases, then oh, this took 6 ounces worth of weight. Kind of gives you an idea on durability and what to expect. So for this one, I just pretty much jumped right into the heavy weight for the Griffin, and yes, they got squished, but every time they would just flex back into their original position. I didn't really go higher than the max weight you see in this video. We basically just capped out at 9 ounces, and it was definitely like flattening the vane, but it would immediately just pop back up. So they're definitely more durable than your standard vane, but they're also heavier. They're a plastic, where most of your vanes on the market are made out of some kind of like mylar or something of that nature. So to kind of sum it up so far, some little cons would be this vane's really small. I think a bigger version might be better. They're supposed to be coming out with a 2-inch. I think 1 inch is way too tiny. The tape did not stick well to them, so don't tape them on. They're not really any faster than a majority of other vanes on the market. They're right in the pack with everybody else. So you definitely want to use glue. There's definitely some pretty good durability with these. I was actually testing these with shooting 5 to 10 arrows at the same 18-meter target just to see how much I can mess them up, and I couldn't manage to mess them up. I guess if your arrow came in and it caught the knock of another arrow, you could probably do some damage to it, or if your arrow managed to catch like inside the vane, you could probably seriously mess it up. But after hundreds of shots, there wasn't there wasn't any issues with that. So that leads me to believe that this might be actually a really good outdoor arrow, but we'll have to see. And again, there'll be a video about that. I just wanted to put this together so that, well, you could see where we're at so far, especially since there's been a lot of interest in this vane. Let me know in the comment section down below if there's what additional things you would like to see, or if you have additional ideas for tests to do with these vanes. I'm just trying to improve this to try to get good information to you, the viewer, the archer that's out there that are interested in these products. Definitely stop by the Short Shot Archery website, link in the description. You can check all my information I have on the Griffin vane and the other vanes that I've tested, and kind of see how everything matches up price-wise, speed-wise, and then how that relates to the length of the vane, and just things like that. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and as always, happy shooting. Also, don't forget to check out Short Shot Archery Shop. We got t-shirts.